I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 16, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Mr. Landry of Louisiana.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Landry, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is very simple. It seeks to improve the environment by ensuring that those states that allow offshore drilling are allowed to keep more of the revenue generated off of their shores. In 2007, Congress passed the historic Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act, or GOMESA. This historic legislation for the first time allowed states to share in the royalties generated from offshore drilling. However, the GOMESA Act only provided 37.5% of the revenue to these states and then capped these states at no more than a collective $500 million per year. Conversely, the Mineral Leasing Act requires the federal government to give 50% of the energy revenue generated on federal lands to states in which it is generated. In Louisiana, we wholly support offshore drilling, but we are proud to supply 80% of our nation's offshore energy. But why should we not share in the funding generated by this drilling? My amendment simply moves offshore royalty sharing more in line with the benefit experienced from onshore states by moving the GOMESA cap from $500 million to $750 million per year. My amendment does not impact onshore producing states. If your state is receiving revenue from onshore energy production now, my amendment does nothing to change that. All the amendment does is move Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, and Alabama a little closer to what those onshore states currently enjoy. This amendment is nearly identical to the amendment that both myself and the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Richmond, offered during consideration of H.R. 3408, the Pioneers Act, of which that amendment passed by bipartisan support of 266 to 159. And I reserve the balance of my time. The gentleman will yield.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I think the gentleman has a good amendment. As he pointed out, it already has passed on a bipartisan basis on the floor, and I think it's worthy to be passed in this instance. So I support the amendment, and I yield back to the gentleman.
I reserve the
gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you. I rise to claim the time in opposition to this amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, every day will be Mardi Gras down in Louisiana if the gentleman's amendment is adopted. We, that is all the rest of us in the country, we're already going to be sending $150 billion to these 4 states over the next 60 years, and I don't blame the gentleman for coming back to try to get another bite of the apple, or in this case, another bite of the king cake. But I would say to the gentleman from Louisiana that his state already won the baby and the king cake when the GOMESA giveaway was enacted back in 2006, and you're already entitled to $150 billion worth of revenue coming out of the federal government and heading your way. And so I just think it's time for your region to give a little back to the other 46 states in the Union that didn't benefit from that 2006 giveaway to you. And, you know, no, we're not begrudging that. You know, what's done is done, and you get the $150 billion. But I just think it's time for us to start thinking about the federal deficit, starting to reduce the federal deficit, and starting to spend some of this money that comes in from the revenues, from the drilling, that it helps out the whole country. And so I would just make that case to everyone else that and by the way, if you come from one of those 4 states, vote for the gentleman from Louisiana's amendment. It's a good amendment for you if you come from one of those 4 states. But if you come from one of the other 46 states, you got rocks in your head if you're voting for that amendment, because it's just another $6 billion going from your pockets into the pockets of those 4 states down there. And it just makes no sense at all after the $150 billion we gave them just 6 years ago. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Louisiana.
I would only remind the gentleman from Massachusetts that this is, if you are an environmentalist and if you want to help protect the environment, like I know the gentleman from Massachusetts so desperately wants to do. I've served with him in committee and enjoyed his passion for taking care of the environment. This is an environmental amendment. The citizens of Louisiana have passed a constitutional amendment that dedicate all of the proceeds from offshore royalty to go to wetlands restoration, coastal restoration, and hurricane protection. This is buying us an insurance policy that the other 46 states who I know have been so generous to help us when hurricanes ravage our coast. This helps to protect us, and I know that the gentleman from Massachusetts would love to help protect the environment in Louisiana. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, I thank the gentleman. I yield myself as much time as I may consume, and again, I'd be willing to have a conversation with the gentleman from Louisiana about what the proper way is of dealing with the funding for the preservation of the wetlands and the other environmentally sensitive areas down in the Gulf of Mexico. But this isn't the way to do it. This is just another permanent entitlement that we're building into the law here, unattached to the hearings and the evidence that we need in order to make sure that whatever expenditures are made by the federal government are actually going for the intended purpose. And that's not what this discussion is here tonight with a 5-minute amendment that we're debating. $6 billion should come at a closer scrutiny than the kind of debate that we're having at 9:15 at night on the House floor, with the only people who are watching the debate really need to get a life, because that's about the level of public scrutiny this is getting right now. And I just think the $6 billion that the gentleman is seeking to request from the public has to be dispensed in a way that actually has a better process. So again, I oppose the gentleman's amendment. I understand his intention, but for the other 46 states, I just don't think it's a good idea at this time, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Louisiana has yielded. Gentleman from Massachusetts. Gentleman from Louisiana has yielded.
I yield back the balance of my time as well.
Questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Louisiana. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
And on that, I request a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Louisiana will be postponed.